3 days of national mourning in Peru, a state funeral slated for Alberto Fujimori, the firebrand academic turned populist president dying of cancer at age 86. Fujimori's name associated with the quashing of the Shining Path guerrilla in the 1990s, and a time when Peru had redressed its economy. However, he fell from grace over bribery, human rights scandals. He was freed after 16 years in jail last December on health grounds. Charlotte Hughes has more.
He was the most polarizing leader in Peru's modern history. The son of Japanese immigrants, Alberto Fujimori was the chancellor of a farming university when he was elected to be Peru's leader in 1990, taking charge of a country on the brink of economic collapse and gripped by political violence. To his supporters, he was the president who crushed the violent Maoist Shining Path movement and revived the country's economy following widespread hyperinflation. But many others view him as ruling as a dictator during his 10 years in office, which was marked by human rights abuses. In 1992, he shut down the country's Congress with military backing and redrafted the constitution. 3 years later, he restored Congress and comfortably won a second term. But an increasing number of Peruvians started to raise concerns, accusing him of imposing unfair constraints on the media and judiciary. Other accusations piled up, including that he had authorised death squads in his fight against Shining Path militants and forced the sterilisation of tens of thousands of people. In 2000, after a bribery scandal involving his intelligence chief, Fujimori fled to Japan before being detained in Chile 5 years later. Extradited to Peru, he was sentenced in 2009 to 25 years in jail for ordering the operation of a death squad responsible for killing civilians. A sentence that he did not serve in full. At the end of 2017, the country's then president, Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, granted him a pardon on health grounds. That pardon was later overturned, but then reinstated in 2023. His death comes after a long battle with cancer, according to his daughter, who also announced weeks earlier that he would be running for president in 2026.
For more, let's cross to Denisse Rodriguez-Olivari, visiting fellow at the Florence School of Transnational Governance. Thank you for being with us here on France 24.
Thank you for the invitation.
How will Alberto Fujimori be remembered?
I always like to make a comparison with the figure of Silvio Berlusconi here in Italy. You know, we're talking about this very strongman politics that use media manipulation, authoritarian tactics, and populism to across the whole tenure and after even they were in office. Let's remember that both of them were convicted for financial crimes. In the sense of Berlusconi, it was financial crimes and tax evasion. In the case of Alberto Fujimori, includes 9 charges and corruption-related crimes.
Yeah, it was, I mean, his name is associated with that decade between 1990 and 2000, as we saw in the report. Tumultuous. It was the best of times when you think of an economy that stopped its tailspin, but perhaps the worst of times when it comes to human rights abuses.
Well, as you mentioned, Peru went through one of the top 5 most hyperinflation in the world with 7,000% to the stabilized economy in the first years of Alberto Fujimori government after a self-coup. And then it was followed by human rights violation as you mentioned, and also the forced sterilization of thousands of women, the cooptation of the judicial system, and a legacy that we'll still need to grapple with.
You mentioned Silvio Berlusconi. Would the comparison not be to a degree with the Marcos family? After all, his daughter has run for president 3 times and will surely try again.
Well, the thing with this kind of political figures, we can find similar politicians across the globe. I mean, I'm just borrowing from Berlusconi because, well, I'm here in Italy. I'm also half Italian. But yeah, well, Marcos is also in the top 10 ranking of the most corrupt politicians in the world, according to Transparency International. So,
when you look at Peru, since Fujimori, presidents have had a short shelf life for their time in office. So many, we can run down the long list of those who've been impeached and removed. The economy has often been stable, but politically it's been very unstable ever since. How much or how little does Fujimori himself have to do with that?
Well, a lot. If we remember, after the demise of Fujimori in 2000, the country went through a relatively pacific and quite a buoyant economy until the elections of 2016. Kei Fujimori failed to acknowledge Pedro Pablo Kuczynski as the new elected president, and she started governing by decree from the Congress. And that's when the whole demise and democratic erosion of the Peruvian politics started. Before that, if you look at the numbers, I mean, people used to have the 5-year tenure, no major political scandals. It was quite pacific. After that, that's why we have this legacy. So in the sense that Alberto Fujimori's and the Fujimori family keep on acting and intervening in politics, regardless of whether Alberto Fujimori was, well, now alive or when he was even in jail.
For all the talk that he might have run again in 2026, was he already considered as a figure of the past?
Well, that name will carry a lot of weight, and he will still be remembered as this very divisive and highly influential figure. Actually, we talk about Fujimorismo and anti-Fujimorismo, which is one of the most important political forces, although it doesn't respond to a political party or an ideology. It's just a sum of different groups that basically what have in common is that are against what Fujimorismo stands for.
And the divide between the capital, the big cities, and the rest of the country, is there going to be? How does that divide look when you're thinking about the legacy of Alberto Fujimori?
Well, that divide actually and unfortunately will continue, and it's even before Fujimori, and that's basically what is explained to a degree the origins of Shining Path and the terrorist groups. This divide in the Andes, most of all in the southern Andes, and how the economic development has not been able to be uniform across the country.
Keiko Fujimori, after the passing of her father, will it be full steam ahead with her brand of populist politics, or can we expect a change?
Well, I think that for her survival, she should recalibrate and think about it, because she lost a lot of steam. She was a third-time runner-up. I mean, how many times can you be second place and not the president? And she lost a lot of the respect of most of the most conservative forces and the political and business elites. So she really needs to recalibrate. And with the death of Alberto Fujimori, there was something that is going to change in this electoral landscape.
And yet, 3 days of national mourning, state funeral, Peru is honoring him.
Yes, I would like to talk about it because according to legislation enacted in 2005, he is entitled to this. When Alan Garcia killed himself, also very controversial former Peruvian president, family, and it's eventually up to the family to decide whether they're going to have a national funeral or not, and they decided not to do it. They decided to go in private. And of course, I was not expecting anything else from the Fujimori family because, of course, they want to try to bolster some support with this.
I want to thank you so much for joining us, Denisse Rodriguez-Olivari from Florence, Italy.
Thank you. Good night.